Welcome to the debate. Today we are examining the pervasive integration of artificial intelligence across our most fundamental human endeavors. We're talking about education, the creative arts, and the modern workplace.
Yeah, it is really everywhere now.
It is, and we are looking at a profound philosophical and practical tension here. The central question before us is this: does relying on AI to generate content fundamentally constitute a form of cheating that bypasses human effort and authenticity? Or is it a legitimate evolutionary tool that simply shifts the nature of how we learn and create?
Right, and this discussion emerges from a wealth of recent source material. We are drawing on academic studies on cognitive abilities, rapidly evolving university policies, emerging legal frameworks for AI copyright, and in-depth analyses of AI's impact on freelance work and the arts.
Exactly. So just to lay our cards on the table, I will be arguing that AI is a powerful cognitive and creative scaffold, one that redefines rather than ruins the human creative process, provided its use is governed by transparency and accountability.
And my position is that excessive AI use is fundamentally a form of cheating, one that facilitates an illusion of learning and bypasses the essential human struggles required for true intellectual development and authentic artistic expression.
Let's jump right into the classroom and the workspace. I want to frame the adoption of artificial intelligence not as an abdication of human responsibility, but, well, as an evolution of our tools. Adopting AI is not inherently cheating. Throughout history, every cognitive technology from written language to the calculator has faced accusations of degrading human capability.
Right, the classic calculator argument.
But it holds up. Because if we look at this through the lens of cognitive load theory, we can see exactly why AI is so valuable. Think of human working memory like a computer's RAM. It is highly limited. AI minimizes what we call extraneous cognitive load. That is the equivalent of background apps draining your battery. The tedious, low-level tasks like fixing grammar, formatting citations, or writing boilerplate code. If an AI handles those mechanics, human beings can focus entirely on germane thinking, the actual higher-order problem-solving. We see this in workplace data. AI tools like GitHub Copilot can reduce standard programming task completion times by up to 55.8%. In both academia and freelance work, the ethical line isn't about the using the tool, it's about transparency. Universities like the National University of Singapore are actively promoting a human-AI partnership.
The calculator analogy is frequently used, but a calculator doesn't solve a complex word problem for you. It just does the arithmetic. Generative AI is actually writing the essay or drafting the code. That crosses a critical line from assistance into what researchers call procedural mimicry. The user is acting out the motions of doing the work without the underlying cognitive gears actually turning. It strips away authenticity.
That assumes the user is just blindly accepting the output.
Which they often are. The empirical data paints a highly concerning picture regarding what this technology does to the developing mind. We have a recent mixed method study of undergraduate students showing that those who are highly dependent on AI score 17.3% lower on critical thinking assessments, and they retain 22% fewer concepts. We are seeing students employ a split-screen strategy. Picture a college dorm at 2 in the morning. A student has ChatGPT open on one monitor, generating an essay, and a blank Word document on the other. They simply retype the AI's output, maybe swapping out a few adjectives or rearranging a clause, specifically to evade AI detection software. They might convince themselves they are doing the work, but this is literal cheating. It bypasses what the educational philosopher John Dewey called the forked road situation.
Meaning the moment of ambiguity where a student gets stuck?
Exactly. That moment of being stuck, of having to choose a path and struggle through the confusion, is where true reflection and learning actually occur. By bypassing the forked road, AI gives us a frictionless path to the answer. And we see the same loss of authenticity extending directly into the arts. AI image generators are not just sophisticated paintbrushes, they are systems built on unauthorized scraping. Stability AI, for example, built its model on 2.3 billion scraped images without the artist's consent. As the illustrator Katria Radin accurately describes it, this practice is cheating and basically fraud.
I want to tackle the art and copyright issue in a moment because it is crucial. But let's stay on this concept of the illusion of learning and the forked road. I don't disagree that the split-screen strategy you described is cheating. It's an attempt to deceive an evaluator. But I would argue that a student feeling the need to do that points to a pedagogical failure, not an AI failure.
How so?
Well, if our educational assessments can be perfectly answered by a generative AI in 5 seconds, perhaps we are testing the wrong skills. Instead of banning the technology and driving it underground, we should be using it as a Socratic partner.
A Socratic partner pushes back. It asks questions. The AI platforms most students use simply output the finished product.
Which is why the integration has to be deliberate. Look at how the world's top universities are adapting. Oxford and Cambridge now explicitly allow AI for personal study, research, and brainstorming. They recognize its value in the formative stages of learning. Cornell University suggests what they call a strategic scaffolding approach. In this model, students attempt tasks first. They engage in that productive struggle, that forked road situation you value. Then, they use AI for metacognitive comparison to see how they might improve or where their blind spots are. That is not an illusion of learning. That is highly personalized, immediate feedback.
That relies on an extraordinary level of discipline from the student, and it ignores the reality of digital dependency theory. This theory suggests that long-term use of these tools fosters psychological dependence and drastically reduces self-efficacy. When students use AI as a crutch, they begin to confuse fluency with mastery.
Let's clarify the distinction there for the audience.
Fluency is the sheer ease of getting a correct-sounding answer. Mastery is the internalized understanding of why that answer is correct. The data shows that when these high-dependency students are placed in an unaided environment, say a secure testing room or a real-world crisis where they can't access an algorithm, they experience intense anxiety and what researchers call solution paralysis. They look at a blank screen or a broken system and literally cannot initiate the problem-solving process. They don't know how to start without the algorithm guiding them.
But again, that assumes the AI is doing all the heavy lifting. The friction doesn't disappear. I'd argue it just moves upstream. The friction is now in the prompt engineering, the curation of the output, and the critical evaluation of what the AI produces.
I disagree that the friction merely shifts. If an engineering student uses an AI to constantly structure their thoughts, they aren't treating it as a Socratic partner. They're treating it as a ghostwriter. They're skipping the recursive writing process entirely. When you look at their keystroke data on educational platforms like DraftBack, which tracks how a document is built, there is no back and forth. There is no deleting, rethinking, or restructuring of paragraphs. It is just a frictionless stream of transcribed AI text. You cannot build deep neural pathways for critical thought without friction.
I think we fundamentally differ on where the value of the human intellect lies. You see the value in the mechanical execution of the drafting process. I see the human primarily as the curator, the director of a vision. And this naturally bridges over to your earlier point about art, authorship, and scraping. You mentioned that AI art lacks authenticity. I entirely agree that human-made matters, but I view the human in this scenario as the creative director. The AI is executing a vision. When a photographer uses a highly sophisticated digital camera with autofocus and computational photography, we don't say the camera took the picture. The photographer's framing, lighting, and vision are what matter.
Oh, come on. The camera analogy falls flat when you look at how these systems actually operate. A digital camera captures photons from the physical world. It does not ingest the copyrighted, heartfelt labor of millions of human illustrators, statistically blend it and spit out a derivative composite. True art requires the human heart. It requires vulnerability, lived experience, and an intention to connect with another human being on an emotional level. An algorithm has never felt heartbreak. It has never grieved. It does not have a unique perspective on mortality. When we look at a painting or read a novel, we are looking for a shared human experience. Without that, it is just a visually pleasing arrangement of pixels.
I hear you, but the human connection remains because a human being is utilizing the tool to express an idea or emotion they have felt. The prompt engineer is the one with the lived experience. Yes, there are massive copyright challenges right now. We are seeing high-profile lawsuits like the New York Times suing OpenAI for copyright infringement over scraping their articles. But these are the growing pains of a disruptive technology. They point to the need for new legal frameworks and licensing models for collaborative creation. They do not justify the outright dismissal of the medium as cheating. Art has always evolved with technology. The invention of the paint tube allowed impressionists to leave the studio and paint outdoors. Synthesizers fundamentally changed music.
But the legal system is recognizing a sharp distinction between a synthesizer and a generative AI. The U.S. Copyright Office, in recent cases involving computer scientist Stephen Thaler, has explicitly denied copyright to purely AI-generated works. Their reasoning is highly specific. The works lack human authorship. The law is confirming what our intuition tells us. An algorithm cannot be an author. Presenting its output as true artistic creation is a facade. It is cheating the audience of that authentic human connection.
Notice the phrasing there, though. Purely AI-generated works. The Copyright Office leaves room for works where a human significantly modifies or curates the AI output. This transition from manual creation to curation and oversight is exactly what we are seeing in the professional workplace, which brings us to our third major area of debate. In the freelance and corporate world, we are moving rapidly away from outright bans on AI. Instead, professional contracts are adapting to include AI usage clauses.
Meaning clients just want to know if a machine did the work they are paying a human for.
Exactly. Employers and clients aren't saying, don't use it. They are saying, tell us how you are using it. It is about transparency. Employees are shifting from being primary generators of raw content to reviewers and editors of AI drafts. This model of hybrid intelligence is incredibly democratizing. It allows individuals who might have lower initial technical skills to execute complex ideas. Like I mentioned earlier, GitHub Copilot reducing programming times by over 55%. If a freelance web developer can use an AI to write standard HTML faster, they can spend more time on the bespoke creative design that the client actually cares about.
That democratization argument sounds appealing until you confront the severe risks of the credibility illusion. The modern workplace relies heavily on professional integrity, accountability, and accuracy. Generative AI is, at its core, a stochastic parrot.
Meaning it is just predicting the next word?
Precisely. It predicts the next most likely word based on the statistical distribution of its training data. It has no underlying understanding of truth, logic, or fact. Because of this architecture, it is highly prone to hallucinations, these confident but entirely fabricated outputs. We have already seen instances where professionals relied on AI and ended up submitting fabricated medical references in legal briefs, or deploying faulty, insecure code into live environments. When an employee or a freelancer delegates actual decision-making or original drafting to a stochastic parrot, they are shortchanging the client. If a client is paying for your expertise, your critical judgment, and your due diligence, and you silently offload that to a machine, how is that not cheating the client? It is a fundamental breach of trust that exposes organizations to massive liabilities, intellectual property risks, and confidentiality breaches.
But those liabilities only materialize if we abandon human oversight, which is not what I am advocating for. The standard of professional integrity isn't that you must do every single task manually from scratch. It is that you take ultimate responsibility for the final product. If an AI generates faulty code and a developer deploys it without rigorously checking it, the developer is at fault for poor review, not for using the AI. That is exactly why modern freelance contracts focus on representations and warranties regarding accuracy and originality. You must verify the output. The AI acts as a sophisticated baseline generator. The human provides the final layer of quality assurance and strategic alignment. That demands a higher level of critical evaluation from the worker, not less.
I would argue that human nature makes that level of diligent oversight incredibly difficult to sustain over time. When a machine consistently produces output that looks 95% correct, human beings naturally succumb to complacency. We trust the system too much. It's the exact same psychological mechanism that causes drivers to stop paying attention to the road when they use adaptive cruise control.
In the context of knowledge work, this complacency means critical errors slip through. But beyond the immediate errors, we have to return to the core issue of human capital and expertise.
You mean the pipeline of talent?
Yes. If we automate the drafting process, the brainstorming process, and the preliminary analysis, how did junior employees ever develop the expertise required to become the senior employees who are supposedly providing this high-level critical evaluation? You don't become an expert by skipping the hard parts. Expertise is forged in the fire of doing the tedious, foundational work. You learn the intimate syntax of a coding language by struggling to write the boilerplate. You learn how to structure a legal argument by writing terrible first drafts. If we remove the struggle of the blank page, we risk severe cognitive atrophy across entire professions. We will have a generation of editors who don't actually know how to write.
That implies the nature of expertise is static. I would argue the definition of expertise is shifting from generation to curation. As we draw this discussion to a close, I want to summarize my perspective. Defining the use of artificial intelligence as cheating, whether we are talking about the university classroom, the artist studio, or the corporate office, is a reductive way to view a profound technological shift. Does it introduce genuine risks? Absolutely. We face challenges with digital dependency, copyright ambiguity, and the absolute necessity for rigorous fact-checking. However, AI is fundamentally a transformative tool that functions as a cognitive scaffold. It handles the extraneous load so we can elevate our creative and analytical ambitions. To integrate it successfully, we do not need to ban it or label it as fraudulent. We need a robust regulatory framework based on transparency, strict accountability for the final output, and ongoing technical support. We are entering an era of collaborative human-machine creation, and leaning into that partnership thoughtfully is the only realistic path forward.
And to summarize my view, we must not confuse efficiency with actual intellectual or artistic growth. The friction, the blank page, and the productive struggle that AI so efficiently eliminates are the exact mechanisms by which humans learn, adapt, and create. Without that friction, we face a very real threat of cognitive atrophy, the illusion of learning, and the loss of authentic human connection in our art and our work. Relying on an algorithm to do the heavy lifting of thinking and creating is a cheat against our own potential. It offers a seductive illusion of capability, but it slowly erodes the foundational skills that make human expertise and human art so valuable in the first place.
It is clear that while we diverge sharply on the philosophical and cognitive implications of AI, we do converge on one absolute necessity: transparency. Whether one views AI as an evolutionary tool that augments human capability or as a threat to authenticity that facilitates cheating, we both agree that human oversight, clear disclosure of AI usage, and strict accountability for the final output are non-negotiable.
Indeed. The tension over whether a machine can ever legitimately shoulder the burden of human creation remains entirely unresolved, but the need for honesty about its role in our work is paramount. We cannot manage what we do not acknowledge.
This is an issue that permeates every aspect of our daily lives right now. It is reshaping the university classroom, the artist studio, and the corporate office. Because it impacts all of us so directly, we explicitly invite you, our audience, to weigh in. We want you to deeply consider your own boundaries. Please leave a comment sharing your thoughts on this specific question. Do you feel that using AI for school, work, or art crosses the line into cheating, or is it simply the new inevitable standard of modern productivity? We want to read your perspectives. Thank you for joining us on the debate.